Around 1 million years ago, the Colorado River cut over 1 mile deep into the Arizona rock and formed one of the 7 natural wonders of the world, the Grand Canyon. This awesome place is home to 2 very different animals with contrasting fortunes. In 1987, the last free-flying Californian condor was caught and kept in captivity. In trying to save the birds, North America forfeited its last wild condors. In the same year, tens of thousands of coyotes were shot, trapped, or poisoned. Despite a concentrated effort to exterminate the coyote, the animal increased its range across North America and Canada. While the condor was teetering on the brink of extinction, the coyote was thriving against the odds. This is the story of 2 American animals, one hounded and branded as vermin, the other cosseted, protected, and regarded as a symbol of freedom. They both find sanctuary in the Grand Canyon. A bullet claims another victim. This female coyote flees for her life. Her mate is dead. Many believe that shooting coyotes is essential pest control. Others look on it as an unnecessary waste of life. Despite its cute, dog-like face, the coyote is best known for its cunning ways and eerie, wolf-like howl. While the sound can instill fear, it is also described as the true voice of the American wilderness. Trickster of Native American legends, devious Wile E Coyote of cartoon fame, the coyote has a quick intelligence. This has enabled it to survive even when all hands are turned against it. The female is pregnant. She no longer has a mate to help her raise her unborn pups. Finding enough food and rearing a family alone will be tough. But the female must struggle on. She desperately needs to find an isolated haven away from persecution. Her pups are due in a few weeks. While the condor can hardly be regarded as beautiful, its 9-foot wingspan and incredible powers of flight have led to the bird being admired, even revered. Only the adults have pink necks and heads, which make them look as if they've been boiled alive. This bird is one of several housed at LA Zoo and is part of the Return to the Wild project. The aim of the scheme is to breed Californian condors in captivity and eventually establish several populations back to the wild. It's important that the captive, reared birds don't see or hear humans. If they lose their natural fear of people, they will never survive in the wilderness. Every bird is monitored regularly. The recovery project has cost tens of millions of dollars and is among the most expensive attempts to save an endangered species in the world. The birds weigh themselves, making it easy to keep daily records and check on their well-being. In the 1700s, the Californian condor was already restricted to the western states, but suffered further as white settlers arrived in the West. The birds were shot and poisoned. Their eggs were taken by collectors, and during the gold rush, their large feather quills were used as vials to carry gold dust. By the 1930s, only a few birds remained in remote hills north of Los Angeles. When the total population numbered less than 15 by the late 80s, conservationists decided the only way to save the condor was to catch all the remaining wild birds. In her search for a new home, the female coyote has wandered into a land of breathtaking beauty. It's here that the Colorado River has cut its deepest gash and created the world's most awe-inspiring chasm, the Grand Canyon. The Spaniards who discovered the canyon were so impressed with the hues of land before them, they named the river, the plateau, and some of the region Colorado, which means color red. Coyotes are common here, but are protected only within the boundaries of the national park. The female's calls are answered by many voices. Coyotes are highly territorial, and strangers are not welcome. The female must move on. Desert bighorns are wary. Coyotes sometimes kill newborn lambs. About 50 miles north of the Grand Canyon, the female coyote has reached a place that the Condor conservation team are seriously interested in. These are the Vermilion Cliffs. Coyotes and condors once coexisted in this red rock country. Although condors haven't flown over this area of cliffs and canyons for over 70 years, there's a chance that they may again soon. These cliffs are isolated and undisturbed. Their precarious ledges offer potential nest sites for condors. Much of the surrounding country is ranchland. Cattle dying of natural causes could provide these scavenging birds with a supply of food. Coyotes will scavenge too, given the opportunity. The female checks for the scent of other coyotes and food. This strange place looks promising. It's crisscrossed with new and interesting smells. Coyotes are blamed for killing calves. It's hard to prove whether they occasionally do or are wrongly accused. Either way, an adult bull is out of the question. Contrary to popular belief, coyotes eat large numbers of insects. Along with rodents, they are often their main diet in summer. There seems to be plenty of food here, but the smell of humans is fresh. The female must keep moving. She needs to find somewhere people rarely go. A few pronghorn roam this cattle country, but while they were once common, they are now rare. Extensive research shows that loss of habitat due to ranching and land development has seriously contributed to the pronghorn's demise. But coyotes are usually blamed for the falling numbers of pronghorn, even though there's no scientific evidence to support these accusations. Thousands of years ago, climatic changes and the advance of early man caused dramatic reductions in large animals across America. The condors were seriously affected by the diminishing herds. They are scavenging birds and rely on carcasses for their food. As this food source dwindled, so they too slid into decline. The female coyote has ventured into a remote side canyon. It's a minor tributary of the Grand Canyon, but the surrounding country is ranched. Not far from the rim, there's obvious signs of man, but the place seems deserted. This time, her calls are not challenged. It appears that there are no other coyotes in residence, and there are no suspicious smells either. She's cautious, but her tentative advances are met with silence. People haven't lived here for 50 years. The area proved too dry and unproductive for small-scale homesteaders. It won't be the easiest place for the female coyote to raise a family, but her pups are due very soon, and she can't go on running for much longer. Inside the shack, the female discovers a dark and secluded basement. Perhaps at last she has found a safe haven. But even this temporary sanctuary will never compare with the secure surroundings offered to the condor. In the return to the wild incubators at LA Zoo, the condor eggs are due to hatch. As soon as an unborn chick starts pipping and cracks its shell, it will be carefully monitored. These birds are so precious, they will be helped to break free of the egg if necessary. The emergent process can take hours. If the chick gets exhausted, it can die inside the shell. The hatchling is checked to make sure everything is normal and its birth weight is recorded. Finally, it's placed in a warm incubator where its progress can be easily monitored for its first few days. In the shack, the female coyote has very recently given birth. Unlike the condor chicks, these 3 pups will have their mother's undivided attention. She will only leave them when thirst and hunger force her to find water and food. For now, the pups are secure, but their mother won't be able to shield them from danger forever. The female coyote has settled on a huge cattle ranch. To these cowboys, coyotes are vermin to be shot on sight. Fortunately for the female, the men rarely visit the most remote, arid regions of the ranch. This is canyon country. Every so often, an inexperienced calf wanders too close to the edge. If it loses its footing, the consequences are fatal. The smell of death attracts scavengers. A resident family of coyotes soon appears on the scene. Hopefully one day they will be joined by condors. If the birds are going to make it in the wild, they must be able to find livestock fatalities. In the meantime, the coyotes have the booty to themselves. As always, they are cautious. It's part of the reason these animals are so successful. Even when hungry, they rarely take risks. It's hard to poison coyotes. If they smell anything suspicious, they won't touch the food. Coyotes have strong jaws and teeth. They are very capable of slicing through tough hide and tearing off chunks of meat. When early hunters came across scenes like this, it's no wonder they thought these animals hunted in packs like wolves. How else could they bring down large mammals? They weren't to know that insects form the bulk of these coyotes' diet, and the chance to scavenge a meal like this is a rare opportunity. Even in close-knit families, there is a strict hierarchy. It's not long before the dominant male pulls rank. There's plenty of food, and the underdogs know it. All they have to do is wait. The female coyote is also out hunting. Her pups are lucky. Rodents are abundant this year. In a bad season, she will be hard pushed to provide enough food for the whole family. The pups are now 6 weeks old. They have been weaned and they are growing fast. This means they have a voracious appetite. Their mother regurgitates meat for them. It may look unappetizing, but carrying food in her stomach is the best way of safely bringing a large meal back home for her family. Female coyotes are devoted mothers, but the pups have needle-sharp teeth, and there's a limit to how much abuse their mother can tolerate. To the female's credit, her pups are growing well, and they are now beginning to explore their immediate surroundings. So far, the family remain undetected, but here, outside the national parks, the risk of discovery is a constant threat. It's feeding time at the LA Zoo, and the Condor chicks are about to benefit from a puppet show. But the performance is not for their entertainment. This leather and fiberglass glove puppet has been lovingly sculptured to resemble the head of an adult condor. To reduce risks of contamination, everyone entering the nursery must first disinfect the soles of their shoes. The chicks are now 5 weeks old. They have grown soft, downy feathers, but they'll always be bald. This is the only mother these chicks will ever know. They seem to accept the dummy readily, and there's even some rivalry for her attentions. Beneath the glove puppet's amusing exterior is a serious objective. Condor chicks can't feed themselves until they are 6 months old, so their keepers must stand in for their parents. But it is very important that these chicks do not identify with humans or regard them as benevolent providers. If they are lucky enough to be released into the wild, they must not venture too near people, as their lives would be at risk, hence the disguise. Under the care of their puppet mother, the chicks are developing well. So far, the breeding program is a great success. There are over 100 birds in various captive breeding locations. The coyote pups are also growing fast, and amazingly, all 3 youngsters have survived. The family are lucky to have found a home where people rarely venture. Their mother cannot stay for long without a mate to help her. She must concentrate all her efforts on finding food. The pups are now ready to leave the security of the basement and start exploring further afield. With no adult to keep an eye on them, these enthusiastic but inexperienced youngsters are vulnerable. Their main threat comes from people, but for the moment, there's no one around. It's not long before they encounter insects, but catching them takes practice. There are other strange creatures to discover. A garter snake seeks cover. The pups are curious and were born with a hunting instinct. Even at this age, they are quite capable of killing a small and harmless snake. Garter snakes are non-venomous and fair game, but deep within these coils of wire lurks a deadly serpent. The pups don't know the difference. To them, a snake is a snake. The rattlesnake will only bite in self-defense if an enemy gets within striking distance. The pups are totally unaware that they are playing a very dangerous game. Only as their mother returns does the snake start to rattle. The female responds to the warning, and the pup heeds its mother's reprimand. Their mother can no longer bring them enough food to satisfy their appetites. It's time to take them out onto the range. The condor chicks have now fledged and progressed to outdoor aviaries in which they can stretch their wings and develop flight muscles. These birds have been chosen for possible release. Before this can happen, the scientists must be confident that when the young condors finally launch themselves off the cliffs, they won't crash land and risk injury. Each bird is numbered and fitted with radio transmitters. When and if they fly free, the The project team will be able to track every move and rescue them if necessary. Cliffs are strange and daunting places to live, and it seems that nothing could survive here, but even in the deepest recesses of this vertical world, there is life. The female knows the canyon rim often provides a good source of food, but it would seem a precarious place to bring her young family. The pups are oblivious to the breathtaking scenery surrounding them, but they are acutely aware of strange smells and new sounds. It won't take the pups long to learn that some animals will always remain out of reach. They are keen to explore, but an unfamiliar rumble will soon send them rushing for shelter. Distant thunder forewarns of one of the forces that is responsible for carving and shaping these canyon lands. High on the plateaus, heavy rainfall erodes depressions in the flat rock, eventually forming pools. The runoff erodes the sheer cliffs, and the river rushing below carves ever deeper into the bedrock. The storm brings the coyote pups a chance to drink. Usually, they get all the moisture they need from their food and dew. The deluge has had far-reaching effects. Cliff swallows spend most of the year on the wing. They only come down to earth during their breeding season, and they can only build nests with wet mud. Their nests are made of mud and saliva. Only after rain has moistened the ground can they collect beakfuls of soil. The mud pellets are plastered layer upon layer to form a gourd-shaped structure. Cliff swallows nest in colonies, cementing their nest to the roof of a cave or overhang. Here they are protected from storms and beyond the reach of enemies. This man is not after birds. He's looking for larger wild animals. Hunting is a very popular sport in America. It's also big business and taken very seriously. There have been reports that coyotes recently killed a calf in these parts. The telltale signs are all here. Coyote footprints are all over the place. The fact that they are not to blame for the calf's death makes no odds. Coyote are listed as vermin and legal quarry outside protected areas. The pups are now starting to feed themselves, but they will still rely on their mother for much of their food. While they rest, she hunts. Insects continue to be the female coyote's staple diet, although she's always on the lookout for something more substantial. This Mustang skeleton was picked clean months ago, but it still seems worth investigation. The female is onto the scent of something much more attractive. She's not after the burrowing owl, though. These small owls migrate to the southern states each summer to rear chicks in prairie dog burrows. It's the prairie dogs that have drawn the coyote. Prairie dogs aren't dogs. They're rodents, which live in large colonies or towns. Underground, they dig a maze of interconnecting tunnels. They are safe below ground, but they must emerge to feed. Out in the open, a coyote may have a chance of grabbing one. But the prairie dogs are hard to sneak up on. One of the many centuries soon raises the alarm. Once down their burrows, they are safe. Their tunnels are long and deep. Even a bear would have difficulty digging them out. Ranchers claim that prairie dogs compete for grazing and riddle the land with holes that can break the legs of their cattle. Coyotes sometimes catch prairie dogs, but ranchers rarely give them credit. They are more likely to encourage hunters to rid their land of these supposed calf-killing predators. But coyotes are cunning, and shooting them requires patience and practice. Hunters need to be well equipped and know all the tricks of the trade. A loudspeaker is placed some distance from the hide. The transmitter plays a tape of a distressed rabbit. All the hunter has to do now is transmit periodically, sit quietly, and wait. The female is on her way back to the pups, but the sound of squealing prey stops her in her tracks. This is too promising an opportunity to pass by, especially when she still has a family to feed. She doesn't see the gun. The young condors continue to be treated like VIPs. Only the best is good enough for them. The birds have fledged and are now ready to expand their horizons. Inside the blacked-out cages, the birds must be totally bewildered. the unloading process is carried out as fast as possible and in total silence. It's still important that they don't hear people. A special release pen has been constructed on top of Vermilion Cliffs. It's from these pens that the young birds will get their first view of their future home. Officials from the Peregrine Fund who are running the release program are here to oversee the operation. For a week or two, while the birds settle down, they will remain in the pens at the back of the enclosure. The young condors are left in peace to survey their new surroundings. Considering the experience they have just been through, they seem surprisingly calm and relaxed. On its way back to base, the helicopter passes directly over the derelict farmhouse. The pups ignore the sound of the flying machine. They don't know that low-flying helicopters should be avoided. No one in this one will harm them, but helicopters can carry men with guns intent on shooting coyotes. This morning, for the first time in their lives, the pups are alone. Hunger is a good enough incentive to make them leave the safety of the shack, and they have no reason to be afraid. Initially confident, their nerve becomes a little shaky as they wander further from home. The pups know by now that long grass is the best place to hunt for insects. Without this source of food, it's doubtful they'd survive. Something strange, which wasn't here yesterday, is hanging on a fence post. For the coyote pups, the smells are familiar, yet strange. They are drawn and at the same time repelled. Tragedy has struck for the first time in their young lives. It's impossible to tell how much the pups comprehend, but some deep instinct makes them run. The pups are still young, but their carefree days are over. From now on, if they are to survive, they must have their wits about them. The Condors have now had 3 months to acclimatize, and their great moment will soon be upon them. This is release day. Miles below them, a crowd has gathered to witness and record this historic event.
What's going to happen by now. now you should all know that the condors are up on this cliff back here.
The best telescopes, the longest lenses are all here, but sometimes the simplest and cheapest solutions afford the best view. The first birds are out. This is a truly momentous occasion. No one knows if they will be able to fly or if they will plummet to their death. The condor is regarded as a symbol of heaven and death. Certain Native American tribes believed it could fly to the gods. The atmosphere on the ground is electric. It's almost touchable. While the crowds hold their breath, the first condors for 100 years launch themselves from these cliffs. The furthest these birds have ever flapped before is the length of their cage. What the experience must be like for them, we can only guess. Landing may be taking a while to master, but the birds are soaring. It's something most of the crowd beneath them dream of. The resident ravens are curious. They've never seen birds this big before. Take the condors a while to master the sudden gusts and updrafts and match the aerial skills of the ravens. Where there are people, there's usually food around. Cooking smells carry a long way in this arid region. The pups are hungry, and the aromas here are irresistible. This is a ranch house, and ranchers generally don't feel too kindly towards coyotes. Only 2 pups make it back through the fence. The condors don't have to go far to find something to eat. Food is laid on for them. Every 3 days after dark, stillborn calves are transported up and laid out at the top of the cliffs. The young condors can't open up the carcasses by themselves. Since these birds have no parents to help, the return to the wild team open the corpses for them. The ravens benefit too. They'll scavenge a meal if there's one going. But the raven may become a threat as the condors mature. They have been known to steal condor eggs. Of the 19 condors that have been released in Arizona, 15 are still flying free. One bird was killed by a golden eagle, another disappeared without trace. The third approached some people and was returned to captivity for its own safety. The fourth bird collided with power lines and died. Hopefully the rest have now learned to fly over them. The young coyotes probably haven't been near people again, and they're unlikely to do so again in a hurry. All 3 are here. The third one has incredibly survived. If it was shot, it has recovered from its injuries. Coyotes are resilient and tough. People have been battling to control coyotes for hundreds of years, yet they continue to run wild. The condors are thriving too. The project is so far successful. The ultimate aim is to nurture a population of about 150 breeding birds flying around these cliffs and canyons. The condors now match the ravens for aerial skills. 9-foot wings outstretched, they can soar for over an hour without having to flap. In the skies, no bird rivals their skill and majesty. After more than 70 years, there are now once again both coyotes and condors here in the Grand Canyon.